Good morning, everybody. It's very difficult to enter in our more prosaic field of work after the inspired word, the inspired message of Carlo Petrini. But we can save this message as like our flagship concept to be inspired in our work. And now I try to come more close to which is the practical mission of our conference, addressing you some remarks that are referred to our experience as a sustainable food planning group yesterday and in this the event of these days, today and tomorrow. Since it was established, the Aesop thematic group on sustainable food planning has explored a large set of conceptual and experiential approaches corresponding to a wide range of policies and practices, thus confirming its multidisciplinary role. We can ascertain it by the number of topics proposed in the previous conference: environment and society, food in urban and regional planning, urban food governance, spatial design, urban planning, and so on. Also, we can ascertain it by the sound group of scholars, planners, policymakers, designers, farmers, suppliers, activists, scientists, etc., that have followed and enriched our work. Accordingly, the key figure of our conferences are more than satisfactory. In the present conference, they are very close to the previous one in Leeuwarden and the average of all the 6 conferences already held. 120 participants, 29 countries, etc., are the figures of the present conference. Finally, the position of Aesop Group on food planning in the international context is not under discussion, but we must interrogate ourselves. First, the effectiveness of our work. After the beginning, when preparing the first conference in Almer in 2009, the conceptual and operational perimeter of the study field was oriented to examine the role of food in urban and regional planning, considering that also political, societal, and academic interest in food and the city are rapidly increasing. Food largely remain a stranger to the field of urban and regional planning, as Potukuki and Kaufman wrote in 2000. At that time, the development of appropriate theory tailor-made for sustainable food planning was still in its infancy. With the second conference, Emerging Theory and Practice, in Brighton, our group broadened its outlook to include a wider range of participants and issues by integrating health, environment and society, rural sociology, urban food governance, etc. Urban peri-urban areas, ever increasing scope, was to become a distinctive mark of the following conferences. During the following years, the conferences have been a unique forum for cross-disciplinary and interdisciplinary exchanges. Now, agronomists are speaking with architects and policy and public health specialists, are debating with town planners and community activists. Also, a common language is gradually emerging. Of course, during the conference, we wanted to follow this common language, this common feeling, and the knowledge we have been building during the past year. However, We hope that with the presentation and the debate that will be illuminated by this conference, we should be able to trigger some new reflection. First of all, the effectiveness of our work. To which extent the work of our group has been or should be more effective. At which level? At the level of the urban policies consulting, in fostering the food movement, in the research, in the education, it is worth mentioning and discuss these aspects. Years ago, we were concerned about define our role in front of a world demanding a different approach to food system. Today, after 6 years of our group activity, having done it in some way, in many ways, having assumed a visible role, it will be a timely opportunity to take stock of the situation and assess what special measures are to be considered necessary for better directing our work. I hope not to be misunderstood. We can list a number of relevant achievements at all levels that have been promoted, that have been produced by our work, by individuals with their research and their many important books, with new groups of researchers, activists that have been influenced by our works, with a number of PhD students educated in our university and now today operating in the cities. So I will be respectful, I will be unrespectable if I will cite just a few number of this experience, because there are many, many others. But let me remember at least one of them, the newly published book of our chair, Andrew Viljoen, and his research partner, Catherine Bourne, that wrote the book Second Nature, Urban Agriculture, that has been shortlisted for the prestigious Royal Institute of British Architects 2015 President's Medal. So, we are a large network, but we are also an incomplete network. In our conference, a great number of participants come from all corners of the world. However, while the diversity of interest and approaches is enriching the debate and the search for solutions, it should be noted that this diversity is quietly, completely represented by participants who are seldom related to production for the market, agricultural food production for the market. We meet among planners, researchers, teachers, students, policy makers, and despite our different approaches, we often share the same point of view among ourselves and speak each other of the same subjects. The fact remains that the counterpart lies outside our circle. For example, those who work in food processing, on transportation and supply chain, are still missing. Many others stakeholders are missing. But above all, also the farmers and their representatives are missing. This is by far the most serious shortcoming. How can we overcome this lack? In other words, the opening of the debate to a great number of operators operating on the market, interested in consolidating their activity on a sustainable basis, needs to be no longer postponed. A relevant number of papers describe works aiming at create a political process through which civil society can follow a path of maturation of cities' problem and implement synergic planning policies and practice. But only in few cases we find something about how the related goals have been processed by specific operation, laws, regulation, agreements, actors. Of course, also in this matter, there are many exceptions. In our conference, we have followed a lot of important presentations that specify all this matter, but it is not so frequent. I remember one among all, the presentation of the Detroit Strategic Framework Plan 2012, presented in Leeuwarden last year by Dan Kincaid. A relevant number of papers shows wide scenarios of sounding principle, recommendation, best practices. Still, the mechanisms that are contrasting these good actions, the obstacle to be removed, bureaucratic, legislative, social, economic, are not adequately described in our conferences. Also, in the works that explain in detail the implementation of a production system technically defined, as in the case of the work presented also in Leeuwarden by Greenkeef about the strategy for the implementation of urban agriculture in Manchester, that was very well argued. Even in case like this, we don't see what are the material problem to be overcome. Yet, in learning, I beg your pardon, I shift my line, I return back. After the presentation of Dan Kincaid of Detroit Strategy. A relevant number of papers show wide scenarios of sounding principles, recommendation, best practices, and still the mechanisms that are contrasting with this good action, the obstacle to be removed, are not adequately described. Four, the need to foster teaching and research. Aesop's mission is to mobilize its resource. It's very clear defined the mission of Aesop here. And also, Aesop focuses its action to promote the development of teaching and research in the field of planning. To which extent is it happening? In respect to the research, the large number of studies and approaches discussed in our conference demonstrates that an intense activity is being carried out with field policies and practice in various ways. The group Sustainable Food Planning Conference disseminates the findings of this research in an international context through the proceedings and other activities promoted by the participants. However, more could be done to produce a better contextualization and visibility to some relevant aspect of research. Some research don't reveal their exact origin. Others appear to be the result of personal studies not yet included in formally structured research programs. For example, with a promoter, a binding goal, defining human and material resource. Little is known concerning the conditions that hindered or facilitated their progress. In short, it can be said that the most common feature of the case study presented can be defined as an action research, differently implemented each time by crossing the boundaries between research, planning, design, assessment, and partnership. Of course, with some and many important exceptions. Indeed, it will be useful to have more research paper with some information explaining the institutional and operational condition in which the study was supported and implemented. As for teaching domain, this fact needs to be emphasized. It is not sufficiently explored. In fact, too few studies are related to education programs and training experience. It demonstrates a lack of recognition of food planning in the academic field, or at least in our community. Actually, food planning and the issue of peri-urban agriculture are two cross-sectoral and struggle to find their place in normal teaching activities. Of course, there are some exceptions, which are mainly related to large schools or very specialized training centers. The fact is that in our conference doesn't come out a sufficient insight on how current training and research programs meet the new challenges of food planning in different countries and cultural contexts. Additionally, despite a significant progress at various levels, from the scientific tool to the policies implementation, it remains difficult to transmit the most advanced experience to the less developed schools and countries. This said, in which way can we improve the transfer of research findings into practical training? This is an issue that is already on the Aesop agenda and needs to be considered more in depth. To this end, and I am finishing, it will be helpful if each experience clearly report the theoretical and methodological framework of reference, if one, the current or supposed operational context within which it is described, and third, its transferability to research and training practices. Dear colleagues, dear students, dear invited person, if you agree with these comments, we think that the bright content of the keynote speaks, the oral presentation and the works of our young researchers that are following will give us new and fruitful suggestions to improve our work, also in the direction above set out, and also in the direction of the warning of Mr. Petrini about our political involvement. But here we are not only citizens expressing a political position, we are planner, technician, involved in some specific solution, and we have the responsibility to address more clearly in this direction. Thank you.